Thank you for attending the Student Organization Summit, and we hope you enjoy the following session. If you're viewing this workshop after the live premiere, make sure to visit our YouTube channel or official website to see an archive of all past discussions and workshops. And now, on to your presentation.
All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. My name is Travis D. Schilla. I use he, him pronouns. I work here at Missouri State University, which is located in the heart of the Ozarks. And I have a kind of a unique role with student leadership. I actually work in residence life, but my title is as the coordinator of leadership development and programming. So I coordinate our student organization, student involvement, and campus-wide collaborations within residence life. So my primary work is with student organizations. I coordinate our how many do we have? We have, I think, 12 student organizations in residence life. So I coordinate that process, oversee the advising, training, development, recognition, scholarships, all of the kinds of things that go along with student organization. So I am a mini office of student engagement that's housed within our residence life department. I've been advising, I've been here at the university for 10 years. I've just finished 10 years in July, and I've been advising total for about 12 years. So just a couple of years beyond that. But love student organizations, love student leadership. That's kind of where my heart lies. So we have a lot of people in the chat, so a lot of people in this session. So unfortunately, we won't be able to go around and do introductions of everyone, but I do still want to try to capture who is in this space. I'm going to do a little sort of like stand up, raise your hand sort of thing, but with reactions on our Zoom. So I'm going to call out some different prompts, some different reflection, reaction moments. If the thing that I call out applies to you, go ahead and pop up a reaction. You can hit any of the reactions that are available on Zoom. You could raise your hand. You could even pop an X in the chat. And what I hope that we do is just kind of, again, get a snapshot of who's in this chat, who's in this space, this discussion. Take a look when you see these reactions popping up. If you've got your video on, you could even give a wave, whatever is comfortable for you. Take a look at who's here and then use this information to consider maybe the context for our discussion. So find the folks who maybe have similar campus sizes to you, similar experience to you. And then at the end, we'll have some time if you're interested in sharing your contact information with folks, if you're interested in continuing this conversation beyond today's discussion. But this is really intended to be a discussion. This is one of the topics that was highly requested for the conference for the SOS this year. And so there's been some good discussion on the Discord server already around recruitment, around tabling fairs. And so I just kind of volunteered to help lead the discussion, guide this. But really, I don't have a presentation. This is intended to be Q&A, discussion, sharing. So let's start with this opportunity to talk a little bit about who's in the room. So again, I'll read some prompts, and if that prompt applies to you, go ahead and respond, react in some way. So go ahead and react if you work at a public institution. All right. How about our friends that work at private institutions? How about folks who maybe work outside of a higher ed institution? So you work maybe in conjunction, but not necessarily at a higher ed institution. Any of those folks in the room? How about folks who work at a four-year college or university? Quite a lot of folks have four-year institutions. Any colleagues in the room that work at community colleges or junior colleges? Two-year institutions. A couple of those folks. How about if you have been advising for fewer than 5 years? All right, a lot of new advisors. Love to see that. Hopefully you still got that energy and excitement for advising. How about our friends who have been advising for maybe 5 to 10 years? Quite a few of these folks. Anyone in the chat who's been advising for more than 10 years? All right, a few folks. All right. Thanks for being here. Go ahead and react if you work on a campus with fewer than 10,000 students. Quite a few folks. What about folks who work on campuses that are between 10 and 20,000 students? A few of those folks. And anyone that's on a campus of more than 20,000 students. Okay, some context again might impact our student involvement type, what it looks like, how we get students involved for sure. How about in terms of student organizations, if your office supports fewer than 50 student organizations? If your office supports maybe somewhere 50 to 100 student organizations. A few of those. What about those whose office supports between 100 and 200 student organizations? Some in that range. And then folks whose office supports more than 200 student organizations. Quite a few folks working in larger areas, large numbers of student groups. Okay, so again, all things that might impact our approach to student organization recruitment, might impact the context for this conversation or the context from which we're coming as advisors, as folks who coordinate student organization processes, et cetera. So like I mentioned, this is one of the, oh, I've got some folks in the waiting room. So sorry, friends in the waiting room. Thanks for joining us. So like I said before, this is one of the topics that was highly requested for this year's conference. So folks were asking for a space to talk about tabling fairs specifically, but then more broadly about organization recruitment efforts. So that's kind of how we're gonna break this down. We're gonna start by talking a little bit about tabling fairs specifically. I've got some prompts. What I'll do is, since there's so many of us, I'll go ahead and throw out some questions to get us rolling. I'll throw out a question at a time. If you're interested in discussing that, if you have a thought to share, something to follow up on, go ahead and pop an X over in that chat. And just to keep an orderly speakers list, I'll go ahead and call on folks. Again, I'm not trying to be controlling, but it just helps us keep things flowing so that we can organize when we have 53 voices in the room. If you do have follow-up questions or something that I've not asked that you want to, get people's opinions on, you want to ask the group, poll the group, feel free to add those in. This doesn't just need to be my thoughts or my questions. I've certainly got some to guide our conversation, but this should be directed by the group as well. So if you have additional thoughts, things that you want to pick the group's brain collective minds on, feel free to throw those out as well. So again, go ahead and pop that X into the chat when you are interested in responding, and we will just kind of roll into talking about some tabling fairs. So I did see quite a bit of discussion on the Discord over this, and through the registration or the RSVP forms that folks submitted, there were some questions or some advice people are looking for regarding tabling fairs specifically. So pretty common thing that we do at a lot of our institutions, particularly around the beginning of the academic year or the beginning of the semester. And then, of course, our friend COVID came in and was not very nice to our tabling fair system. So I guess just to maybe start out, we can just do, again, a kind of a quick reaction here. And then if anyone has anything to add to that, let's go into that. First of all, how many of you had in-person tabling fairs this year? Definitely quite a few. Definitely the majority, it looks like, of schools had some sort of in-person tabling fair. Um, let's start there. How did those go for the first time in almost 2 years? Julie says they had an in-person tabling fair. How did those go? Any lessons learned, adaptations that you're having to make, things related to COVID adjustments to our tabling fairs? Students craved it. Yeah, we definitely found that as well. Yeah, Maggie, go ahead.
I did notice that we previously never assigned table spots. And so when students would come up to us and be like, hey, where's this table? I had no clue. So creating like a map in order to give out to students. Also, COVID doesn't really exist down here in South Georgia, apparently. So we don't really talk about it or discuss it in any way, shape, or form. So we were right back to the way that we were doing things previously. But one thing I do think I'm going to do for the future is make that pivot and make sure we have a map the way that we can give out students. At least that we can give them like the genre areas, like this area is academic organizations, and just send them that way. So it's a little more structured than just like to the wind, go out and find something kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course, COVID just exists on the news really, and not so much like where you're at. But yeah, no, I hear you. Julie, go ahead.
We knew to be strategic, we had to partner with our associated students. They are the student voice. They really know what students wanted. I work in student leadership and development, and so we partnered together, and they also have more money. And so they were able to purchase giveaways, tumblers, totes, things like that, that students who were coming to visit the fair got something from it. You know, I love a good tote when I go to a conference, and I'm going to put all the goodies in it, right? And so it was really nice to be able to have students who were visiting the fair really glow as they walked away with something. And then on the other side of that, ASI also introduced a virtual online stamp program, Loopy Loyalty, what it was. And I was like, of course ASI would think of that. That's awesome. And so that really helped the organizations just have an easy way for them to come by. And of course you had to visit like 3 to 5, I think it was 5. You had to visit 5 different organizations to get the go away prize or whatever, the takeaway. But partnering really helped. And I think we're just going to continue that moving forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Molly in the chat says we had to have less folks, but a lot of students showed up and have been asking for more. Yeah, we've definitely found that students are really craving opportunities to get involved, but they're not always seeing those opportunities. They're not always, or at the time that they're available, they're maybe not able to engage with them at the time, but then afterwards we're seeing a lot of folks. Dylan says, went pretty well outside on campus mall. We adjusted our layout to encourage distancing and improve traffic flow, required masks, and had about 80% of vendors compared to a typical year with a similar number of attendees. So that's great. So yeah, you just kind of make some adjustments, right? But students still want this kind of experience. Go ahead, Evan.
Hi all, Evan, he, him, his. I'm at Fairmont State in West Virginia, and we kind of combined a student org fair type event with one of our welcome back events. So we had it during our welcome back bash where the student government sponsored a live band, and the student activities office brought in a food truck. And then instead of just setting up tables, we had every student organization sponsor a different activity. So we had required them all to have some kind of different activity at their table that would be more engaging and have the student organization leaders interacting with students more actively. So we helped provide things that we had, like cornhole boards or can jam or Jenga. The theater organization got up a bunch of props from their costume closet and put together like a little photo booth station. And so it was really cool to see that there was a lot of activity going on. There was also the draw to attend for the free food and music and stuff. So it was more than just an org fair, but they were still able to connect and interact with the organizations. And it was one of our most well-attended events. And I thought it was a really good way to kind of change things up a little bit and make it a little bit more active and engaging.
We did something on my campus. So we were noticing at the beginning, not the beginning, around the middle of the semester, that we had quite a few students who were talking about, like, at the beginning of the year, they missed the opportunities to get involved with student organization. So whether that was because they were feeling overwhelmed, they were feeling nervous at the beginning of the semester, whatever that was, they in the middle were like, wow, I missed this opportunity. So we connected a tabling fair with one of our Halloween events that took place. So we did an outdoor sort of trunk or treat-esque style of event for students on campus, where student organizations could set up booths on campus, like on our North Mall. And then the participants would go around and sort of trick or treat to those groups. But while they were doing that, they were meeting the student organizations, they were learning about them. So it was another great way to get folks involved. The downside was that many groups were already pretty well established by that point. So it could be a little bit harder for folks to break that barrier and get into those groups. But it was another opportunity in the middle of the semester for folks to meet a lot of student groups. That kind of thing doesn't tend to happen, at least not on our campus. And did you have something to share?
I was just going to share, a happy accident is that we do ours inside, but in our basketball arena. So we have a contained space for weather conditions kind of not limiting us. But we have to cap. We have over 475 organizations and only about 250 spaces. And in order to de-densify, we took the risk to move to 2 nights. We weren't sure how that would work with the orientation. Would students come 2 nights in a row? And it was really great. So we will continue that model. It was less overwhelming to everybody involved. And it's going to allow us to open up to units and departments that want to promote to students. So we were not sure if going 2 back-to-back nights would sort of decrease attendance for everyone, but we organized them around like groups, so like categories of organizations. And then the only other thing I would say that, we knew how to do a virtual fair, so we partnered with our transition and engagement programs office to do one at that critical sort of 5.5, 6 week mark of campus to get the second wave of involvement for students, because we were like, well, no harm, it won't hurt anyone to do a virtual fair the first week of October. Low participation, but the idea is still there that, we like the idea that we could offer a hybrid model at a different time period with relatively little use of resources, but it didn't go over as well as we wanted to, but we'd like to keep trying that.
Some trial and error, though, right? you try new things. Dylan added in the chat that we strongly encouraged engagement tied to each org or vendor's mission as well. And it was much more engaging than just tabling, so giving it a purpose as well. Rachel, you have something?
Similar to what Ann said, so I work in the college business, so the student engagement fairs during welcome week things. And then our college always steps back, and we have about 30 student organizations that I coordinate. And so our fair is week 4 of the semester. And so they've been to the big one, and then they can hone in on ours. And then that way they have a social RSO, student organization, and a professional organization that we're trying to encourage. But then what Ann was saying about kind of later on, most of the colleges around campus have a freshman orientation type class, and it only goes the first half of the semester. So we do a second fair at that 8-week mark to just say, hey, again, we told you to get involved. These are the things, now that you maybe know where your buildings are and things like that. Hopefully you're a little bit more familiar and just feel comfortable getting involved. And then during officer orientation, we just remind our officers, remember when you were a freshman and that wasn't the first thought, or you didn't really know what you're doing, or you were scared, or whatever it is, like that's the freshman now. So, and they haven't been in person for high school either, so they don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunities that folks create in the middle of the semester for students to get involved with the student organizations. We tend to think of recruitment as being something that happens only at the beginning of the year or the beginning of a semester, but there are a lot of barriers that could prohibit folks from getting involved right at that point. There's just so much new that's happening. It might not feel like they could take that on, but 8 weeks down the road, 6 weeks down the road, it might feel more accessible for folks. So I like the idea of encouraging folks again and doing it in like an organized manner to recruit folks. Allison says, yes, we encourage orgs to host call out meetings mid-semester too. Yeah. Evan, go ahead.
I just want to add another thing. While it's not necessarily a big org focused events, we try to partner with student organizations on our office's other activities and programs. And so that way, when it kind of helps both of our areas, because it helps the org get their name out there. It helps them kind of have more of a presence on campus, but it also helps us to expand our outreach and our marketing for our events, because they can tap into their networks and bring people into our events so we get better engagement at our office's programs. But again, it just gets their name out there. So that's something that I've been very intentional about, because I oversee both organizations and campus programs. So I've tried to kind of combine those two and get organizations to help us get attendees and also help get their name out there more on campus. And that's kind of an ongoing way that I try to get students connected to organizations throughout the semester.
The mutual benefit there. So Evan, you kind of transition us to a nice like next question here, which is how do you promote and how do you maybe incentivize attendance at these tabling fairs? How do you actually get people to come to these kinds of things? And since we work with our class presidents too, and the sophomore class president distributes information in the fall about the big fall fairs. And then in January for, oh, I lost it. In January for our mid-year fair, we asked freshman and sophomore class presidents to promote on class listservs along with the FYE outreach that goes to transfer students. So highlighting that fairs aren't just for brand new students. Yeah, I think that's really important as well. We do tend to think of those. In fact, on my campus, they used to be called the New Student Festival is what it used to be called. So thinking about, recruitment is something that only happens at the beginning of the year. It only happens in your freshman year or your first year. We need to kind of move away from that. So whatever we can do. So I like that idea. Maggie, did you have thoughts on the incentivizing the recruiting?
Yeah, so we're doing it in our student union, which is one of our biggest food sources here on campus. So that kind of helps. And then in January, where they're going to do like take over the whole student union. It's literally just going to be student organizations, no departments or vendors. And it's like get the scoop. So there's going to be ice cream. And so then they're going to be able to interact in a more sociable way, like they can have tables. But I'm going to really encourage them to walk around and have those conversations instead of them, just standing behind a table twiddling their thumbs. Because no student wants to walk up to a table. That's scary. So
it could be intimidating.
And having conversations over ice cream is a little more fun than walking up to the table. So.
Yeah, definitely. Benny, go ahead.
Yeah, so tried multiple ways across multiple campuses. So even for my undergrad, the way they would get most of the commuters, because we're mostly a commuter campus, we would buy out 100, 200 meals for commuters. So we would have the meals at the club fair, and we would tell the commuters, hey, do you want free lunch, free meal? Come and swipe and come join the club fair and you get free food for the day. And this depends how much power you have on your campus. On my other small private liberal arts campus, we would just move entire dining services to the club fair. So the dining hall would be closed. And if you wanted to eat, oh no, you had to go to the club fair. So another way, you just trap them. But I was also, in one of my roles, I did clubs and orgs and programming. So I would just have my programming board make sure they had something big at the club fair. So it was our chance to usually give our movie schedule, any promo items we got for that semester, try to have some attraction or some service or vendor they could get free stuff from. So the more you could interact if you're separated by student orgs and activities, just work with each other, have them have like a carnival type of event or just a whole bunch of giveaways. Make your programming board know this is their chance to put their foot out for the new students. The more stuff you have, the more noise, lights, food the students are going to come there. And I know all of us already do this. Just put it in the middle of the campus, make it impossible for students to walk around or they have to go through across. But I think the one that really worked, if you have the power and the means, just move your dining services to the club fair for that day.
Yeah, Evan agrees with you that food continues to be a big draw for students. We've seen that as well. We've done some things with like passport sort of things that they could do when they're at those. So they have to get, talk to so many organizations before they're able to access the food. Some things like that, again, can create barriers, but can create incentives to actually engage with the organizations. Melissa would like to know from the group, do you do club fair in the fall and the spring or just the fall? Maybe we could use our reactions here again. If you do, Benny says, I've done just fall, but my new job is both now. If you do them in both fall and spring, go ahead and shoot up a reaction. So quite a few, but definitely not as many. So it seems like most people are probably just doing them in the fall. I know on my campus, we do something in the spring, but it's not quite it's not quite the full tabling fair. So it kind of, I think is maybe what Ann was kind of describing before, where we will, in the spring, at the beginning of the spring semester, we'll do sort of days that are, themed. So we might have our religious organizations that will table in our student union on a specific day. At that same time, the next day, it might be our rec sports organizations. On the next day, it might be our honoraries. It might be our fraternity and sorority life groups the next day. So it just sort of depends, but we've themed them like that, almost breaking them down into more specific kinds of tabling fairs. Liz says this year we are just doing a virtual fair in the spring. Julie says our ASI also bought a free slice of pizza from our Warrior Grill. You're all right. Food attracts, especially free food. That is so, so true. Allison says we tried a block party style in the fall to spread out. That could be a great way to, not just get folks on all in one area. Could help with COVID, but it could also just help with not being in big groups. That's kind of like intimidating to folks at any time. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when you're at these tabling fairs. So does anyone do anything festive at tabling fairs beyond just providing tables? Thinking about signage, we talked about some food, decorations, any kind of thing that you do beyond just providing the tables for your student groups? Yeah, thanks, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm actually planning a involvement fair that's happening in the beginning of the spring. And so here at UAB, we do two large, so I guess a large involvement fair at the beginning of each semester. So our fall semester is called Connect Fest, and it's tied to basically their first day or the day before the first day of classes. And then the spring semester, it's kind of like a New Year's themed. And so kind of like the concept of like resolve to get involved. And so we, like, for example, this upcoming event that I'm planning, I was thinking it'd be really cool to do some like passive assessment. And that's kind of a question that I had for y'all as well, but some passive assessment where it was like a resolutions board. And they could take like a pin and put a pin in a category of where they wanted to get involved in. And that could be a great way too, instead of like sending out a survey, because everyone hates surveys. But they could put a pin, and then it could be like a category like, I want to enhance like my leadership in the current organization that I'm in, or I want to start an organization, or I want to join at least one new organization, or that sort of thing. And then the pin could be like the color based on their classification. So like a sophomore, junior, senior. And then, yeah, so hoping that'll work out this upcoming semester. But I also had like, a question. I know that we just started on this topic, but whenever we get the chance, I'd love to talk about assessment, like how we assess, like if this is actually effective. Because I have been in the habit of just doing like a quick survey. Like if you do a survey, you get a free t-shirt or whatever. But I'm trying to think more outside of the box, hoping the resolutions board is a good step. But I think, any other advice too, just because like, then I know, like, is this tabling actually working, or do you want to do something more fun? Like I've even dabbled with the idea of like speed friending, where like each organization has a different room in like our student center, and then like they can go around and visit different rooms, like, and they have like a specific time, and then you rotate, that kind of thing. But I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts on that too.
Yeah, Alex, I do have a question coming up where that will tie nicely. So we will circle back to that in just a moment. Regarding this, Justin said the radio station DJs the event. Molly says we have a lot of yard games that we purchase for free rental for our clubs. Evan says, again, we encourage our orgs to have activities and or giveaways at their stations. Always good. Benny says, my undergrad had the radio station DJ and announced stuff for us. So that's a great way as well. I wish my campus had a radio station. I think that's kind of cool. Julie says, radio station fun. Fun names and yard games, great ideas. Kathy says each of our student orgs has a trifold board that they decorate to highlight their org and draw attention to their table. And Benny says we are thinking of a punch card system. Get your cards signed by orgs for a chance at a prize. Yeah, great. Good ideas. Yeah. Any other things we want to add to this one about what goes on at your events? Specifically, some folks were asking about signage. Do you provide signage at the tabling fairs? And if so, what do you use? What does that look like?
Hi, everyone. My name is Monet. I'm sorry, my camera, because I'm connected through my VPN, so
All good.
you wouldn't
Welcome.
be able to see me. Yeah. I just wanted to add about what kind of festive things that we do. So we have a what we call a solid scoop, which is what we like to say is like an elevated club fair. But one of the things that we do is every year we theme it. So whatever the theme is, we'll do an activity. We require all the clubs and organizations to either have a activity, a game, or a giveaway at their tables. In addition, we'll bring in a band. So we did, one of the themes was like celebrating the Polynesian islands. And so we brought in a band, and they came with dancers and everything like that. And so not only did they go around to the club tables and stuff, but then they got to do, different Hawaiian dances and different dances from the region, because they showed them that type of stuff. And then we also brought in a food truck that was also on theme. And so every year it turns out really great, and it's a nice way to kind of bring everyone together. So we only do it in the fall though, but I found that, picking a theme each year gives students a little bit more than just, having to explain about their organization, which is nice in the main purpose that they're there. But on top of that, it gives everybody another opportunity to just connect with others and meet new people and everything like that.
Yeah, thanks, Monique. Glad to have you here. Trish says we have a poster island, so students can come in and design signs. Well, that's nice. So let them kind of create their own. Benny says we had a street sign vendor, and it was pretty much an unofficial tradition. Majority of new students will have custom street signs in their rooms. Any other thoughts? Any other contributions regarding like what you do at the festivals? How do you do anything festive? Signage, food, decor, and then specifically that, do you provide signage at the tabling events? And if so, what does that look like? This was something that folks asked quite a few questions around in their RSVPs or through the Discord. So I want to make sure we get some good brainstorming going there.
I had something on signage.
Yeah.
It was simple, but I realized one year we just typed out the name of the organization and hung it on their awning. And the next year, it made a difference, but we posted along with typing out their organization, but their logo. And it was very simple, but putting that together just made their visibility just a lot more. The street sign idea, that sounds amazing. And the food trucks, I think that would be so cool. I'm hoping they're cheaper where y'all are, because that would be expensive to bring one here. But yeah, that street sign, that's a great idea.
Like the idea of connecting to campus traditions as well that you have. So that sounds like a tradition on that campus. And so they tapped into it for the tabling fair. Anything you can do like that. Evan says we did custom street sign events, not related to the sign org, student orgs, but it was very popular on campus. We did something like that in my undergrad, and I do remember that being pretty popular as well. Might be something to bring back.
Kind of going along with that idea. Kind of going along with that idea with what we do with the solid scoop. So since we require every organization to have a table, we actually do a table decorating contest. So we give them $250 towards the org that has the best table. So most of our students end up doing, of course, signage because they are looking to enter this contest.
Love that idea. That's great. That really helps to kind of create a fun atmosphere, does some hopefully healthy competition, but yeah, that's great. Some folks are sharing name of street sign vendors. Someone says Neon Entertainment. If you're interested in street signs, that is a good vendor. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what Alex was starting to ask. So I'm wondering how do you track which group students talk to and join? And kind of along those lines, how are you assessing the overall effectiveness of your tabling groups? What does that look like for folks? Go ahead, Julie, thanks.
So what comes to mind immediately is when we did have any sort of virtual tabling. We're a campus that uses the platform Campus Groups. And what was really helpful, and we didn't even realize this at the time, but for a virtual fair, anybody who comes into the booth and clicks "I'm interested" immediately becomes one of those groups' contacts. And I don't think I or the groups realized that until they were asking for the list, and we're like, well, didn't you grab it? Like, we could get it, we could figure that out, but we ended up realizing that, hey, you have that list. You always have that list. You should keep that list and continue to maintain communication with that list. So that was really neat. We, in person, really encourage the groups to create, I know, Molly, you're totally right. We encourage them to use Campus Groups. Warrior Life is what we call it, as you can see right here. We encourage them to create the form so that they have like an iPad or a computer or something where students can type in their information, or they could have their page up and then click the "I'm interested" button. So whether they're in person, being able to go on that contacts list, or just an old-fashioned name, phone number, email, physical sign-in sheet. Because of COVID, they have to have that anyway for all of their in-person events in case safety and risk asks for it. So we'll see, but those have been working so far.
Great, thanks. Yeah, some folks also frustrated with that system, it seems like. Alex definitely had a great suggestion about like tracking where students were connecting or what their goals were maybe. Does anyone else do anything to track what the effectiveness, I guess, of these tabling events? Do students actually meet groups? Do they join groups as a part of these, like as a direct result of participating in the tabling fairs, or other things that you do to assess effectiveness? Or is this a gap for all of us? Gap for me, Melissa says. I'll definitely say it's a gap for us for sure. There's really no organized follow-up really. It's really left for us. It's left up to the individual organizations to have some sort of sign-up sheet at their table, connect with folks afterwards. Benny says we send separate evals to the student orgs and to students to see how each side thinks the event went. That's great. Was someone starting to share something? No, okay. Well, this would definitely be an area for folks to explore. If you're ever interested in doing a research project, if you're ever interested in presenting at a conference, seems like the effectiveness of these org fairs is something we probably anecdotally know that there's some good things that come out of these, but what are we actually doing to capture that? How do we actually know what efforts work well? Not a lot of collective advice necessarily about that in the room, it seems like. So some good follow-up that you could consider. What could you do on your campus to follow up to the groups? How could you track the effectiveness, track whether students are actually joining organizations, whether they've stayed with those groups, and figure out ways to assess what's going on. So some folks started to mention a little bit about virtual tabling fairs. So I'm wondering, maybe moving forward, or advice that you have from past years, have you used any of the virtual platforms like Handshake, for example, or some of the others that were mentioned? And if so, what was your experience with these virtual fairs? Does it work? Is it a good idea? Yeah, go ahead, Benny.
So it wasn't a specific program. I really copied a convention or con that did virtual. So what they did was they kind of catered to whoever the vendor or the content creator was using. So especially for our vendors who are usually older people within our town, they specifically only stream on Facebook or YouTube or whatever it may be. So we just made a giant PDF of all the time slots like you would see at a convention, like how you like even this conference, how you would get a schedule, and it was hyperlinked. So you would click the hyperlink to join their information session, their videos. So it could be a YouTube link, it could be a Facebook, a Teams, a Zoom. I know it was all over the place using everything known to man, but everyone felt comfortable hosting with their own, preferred software, preferred service. And a lot of students did go. I mean, we had a lot of our office popping in through all the sessions. And it was just like a giant conference, virtual conference. And I think people really like that they could choose how to do it and not be pushed to do Zoom if they don't like Zoom. So I guess it depends on your campus, and we did it really fast because we didn't know what was going on the first year of COVID, but it seemed to work well. We made it look like a con, like anime con or something. That's what I really copied it off of a model, and the students really liked it. So if you students are anime nerds, go ahead and copy what I did.
We did sort of a homegrown thing, kind of. We tried something last year, and it was through our Campus Link platform, where each group got to submit their own Zoom link, essentially, and then at a certain time, students got to join them. I will tell you, it was a terrible flop on our end. Almost no student attended. When they did, they struggled to find the right codes. It just was not good at all. So I would suggest if you do something like a virtual tabling fair, you probably use a platform that has something set up. And some folks shared some ideas there. Where did I see these? Kathy says we use kumospace.com in the fall and it worked extremely well. And then Jasmine shared a link here to tabling. Is that UC Riverside? Is that what UCR is? And Kathy linked to Kumo Space there as well. So some great opportunities, some great resources for folks. Alex, did you have something to add?
I was kind of, again, thinking about other ways to have involvement fairs, and virtual involvement fairs obviously were a thought, but more specifically trying to target off-campus commuter or e-learners. And I didn't know if anyone had ever created a virtual involvement fair with that specific target audience in mind, or if that's even something that we have thought of that, do these types of students want to get involved? And how are we equipping our students to accommodate, I guess, members who can only join virtually because they're in a different state or a different country. And so I didn't know if anybody had those thoughts, but it was something I was thinking about how we can capture students who aren't our traditional on-campus, living in the dorm kind of students.
Yeah, great question. I know on my campus, we actually have some rules that don't allow us to engage with those folks as much because they don't pay student activity fees. They're not able to join certain student organizations. And that's for folks who are strictly virtual learners, e-learners. If they are taking in-person classes, then they do pay those student activity fees and have access to some other opportunities as well. And it's not a hard, can't join anything, but there are definitely some restrictions that make that challenging. But does anyone focus on e-learners, distance learners, connecting them, any kind of engagement fair or recruitment efforts for those folks specifically?
So I can say a bit about that. We are a community campus only, and we are still primarily virtual. We're going to be a little more in person in the spring. So we have really focused heavily on our web students. And due to the pandemic, we've gotten a lot of students that are virtual only, even pre-COVID, that are still just doing web courses that they live a couple hours from campus, and which is why I use the Kumo space. And we really have focused a lot on that. If you click on that Kumo space link, you can see that there is a room for each organization. We also had some outside entities and campus departments at the fair. And it was nice because students could literally go from room to room and check them out. So yeah, and we're going to continue to really promote to our web students, you know, as we start to do in person. I'm just starting in the spring to do in-person events, but we're going to live stream anything that's in person, and probably still do, I'm going to say at least 60% is still going to be virtual only.
That's pretty significant still, yeah. Benny shared a link to MomoCon, to something that they paralleled or modeled off of. Liz says spring semester last year, we used Padlet to make a virtual involvement bulletin board and had student orgs make posters for it. So kind of a little bit of a different, maybe more of a passive way of doing it, but thinking about that virtual bulletin board where folks can still learn about things that are going on. Liz again linked to this the Padlet for WCU, their leadership involvement bulletin board. So great opportunity there to consider a virtual opportunity to connect folks that might not be that same kind of tabling fair, different format. Any other thoughts here about these virtual platforms or virtual tabling fairs? Are there any questions about tabling fairs that you all would like to throw out? I've got some other things about general recruitment efforts for student orgs, but yeah, Alex says, thanks for all the resources. This is great. I think this is what folks were hopefully looking for, and hopefully we're getting some of these good ideas, good resources. But are there any other questions you all would like to throw out to the group regarding these tabling fairs specifically? Yeah, go ahead, Maggie.
Just kidding. Does anybody have any resources that they give to students, like whether that's a Word document of like, instead of tabling, do this? If so, I would love to see that because I would like to create one myself.
Julie's
Yeah.
I gave tabling tips. Yeah.
It was really helpful. It was something I didn't even think about. I kind of assume that people know how to talk to each other, but I can no longer assume that. And so, yeah, it was really helpful. It was short and sweet, but it was very helpful.
Patricia says that they also used Padlet, and they paid for a pro version to be able to have more of those flyers or those different boards posted, and was really well received by families over the summer, and a few updated their flyers throughout the spring. Benny says, I tell clubs and orgs to give me their Discord links and promote it on our server and site. So this might lead to the question that I think Evan was asking, and kind of leads us into maybe more broadly, what are some of those other kinds of recruitment efforts that we coordinate on campuses beyond the tabling fairs? So not necessarily like one student org that's looking to recruit, but how do we, as student org managers, how do we create opportunities beyond the tabling fairs for folks to recruit? What kinds of things do you do at your campuses? Yeah, Benny, go ahead.
I mentioned it for those who were in my Discord presentation. So my last campus, we did have a student life Discord server, and I found a lot of our clubs already have their own Discord servers. So I made a specific chat where I listed every club and org and their Discord invite link. So any students that wandered into our virtual office wouldn't even need to ask a question. They just go to the student org chats and they would see all the orgs and the hyperlink to join their server and immediately start talking to the members. And have that one-on-one rather than me saying, hey, here's here, shake hands, meet. Now they can just do it on their own time whenever they want to.
Jasmine says that they have groups create recruitment videos. Jasmine, do you all then like share that on social media, or is that emailed out? How do folks then access those videos? What do you do to promote that? We give students a mini tutorial on iMovie for it. Mm-hmm.
So basically we shared their videos on YouTube on our channel, and we also highlighted each recruitment video each day, several a day, so maybe like 4 a day on our Instagram. That was pretty helpful for the groups. And I can drop the videos that we used to give as well.
Great, thank you. Sammy says in our sign up form for our spring involvement fair, we included an option to request a meeting with our staff so we could work one-on-one with them and give them some ideas prior to the fair. So doing some more of that one-on-one coaching with individual groups to help them figure out how they might want to, how they might most effectively recruit. Kathy says we use Engage, and every student organization has a space on there. We encourage them to keep their space up to date and utilize the news function to publish news stories about their orgs. Yeah. We do some similar things with our Campus Link platform as well. Jasmine shared that YouTube link there. Thank you, Jasmine. Any other sorts of trainings that you do for your student organizations around member recruitment more broadly? How do you prep your groups? How do you train them to do some of the recruitment? Also, before folks leave, I'm going to share in here, if you're interested in sharing your contact information to stay in touch, to connect with others afterwards, not something that's required, but I dropped a link in the chat there. If you're interested in putting in some, sharing out your contact info, you can use this to stay in touch with each other, to reach out to one another, connect, continue to ask some of those questions, share the resources, etc. Again, not required, but so if you're interested, there's an opportunity. It says error for you. Oh no. Oh, wow.
It works now. Maybe my server, the Wi-Fi at this institution is not the greatest.
A couple people got the error. That's weird.
Okay. I was like, hopefully it's not just me.
Had to try twice. I don't know what that's about. Sorry, y'all. Maybe hit refresh. For some reason that seems to be working. I'm not sure. Any other, we're kind of down to the last few minutes here. Any other advice about or thoughts on that training for student orgs around member recruitment, or just any other questions that you all would like to throw out? Any advice you're looking for related to student org, recruitment processes, recruitment management, tabling fairs, anything along those lines?
I just want to say I'm really glad Julie made the comment about students talking to each other. I thought it was just my institution and our culture here. To me, what works the most is communication and getting students to bring their friends and getting out there. And that seems to be really hard for them. And I don't know if it's post-COVID or just cultural shifts. So I'm kind of looking to like redefine how our culture is at our school, because they do everything through group chat, and then drama happens through group chat. So then everything that gets done is within their organization, and no one outside the organization knows what's going on. And so I'm glad that Julie kind of validated me and my kind of role here, because I thought it was just my students who struggle talking to each other, like verbally, and getting the buy-in, right? Like when I was in college, I would go and bring all my whole floor for my residence hall, and that's what made the numbers. Now they're trickling in by themselves, or they're not coming, but they like the idea of the event or the program that the club's putting on, but they don't want to go to it. So I just appreciate the validation in this room. So thank you.
Sometimes it's just nice to know that like the things you're struggling with are not solely your issues, even if you don't always know how to solve them together. It's just nice to know that like, okay, we're not alone in this. We're not doing something wrong necessarily. Yeah, so thanks to everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing a lot of great ideas about tabling fairs, about helping to support student organizations in their recruitment efforts. This recording, I think, will be shared through the SOS site later. And then I will send out this contact sheet to the emails that you list in there if you're interested in that. Again, just a way to stay in touch with folks, follow up on maybe some of the ideas that were shared. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate you sharing, participating. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend ahead of you. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you for watching this presentation. To see other presentations, workshops, and discussions, feel free to utilize our YouTube channel or official website.